Welcome back to my Ultimate Garden Room series. Now I've decided to build some high-level storage, and it will also double as a kind of mezzanine sleep frame. So effectively, I'm going to be building a bed frame. So it's going to be a lightweight timber structure that goes across the top of this area here. It's going to have a small bulkhead which shines some lights down onto a wall in the corner, so it serves a couple of purposes. It's just a nice quirky detail. We've got this space here, it's the ideal space for it. It's got a nice little bit of headroom up there for resting and sleeping, and I think I'd love to sort of sleep up there in the trees almost. So that's what I'm doing. So the way I'm going to do it is I've got two softwood bearers going down either side, bolted back to the glue lambs. Then on the softwood bearers, I've actually formed recesses, so the joists are just recessed and drop straight in like a long ladder frame. Then I'll screw some decking over the top, some boards over the top. We'll bring our electrics through the ceiling for some downlights, etc. And then we'll put a nice finished floor on the top, plaster the underneath, and I think it'd be a really quirky little detail. So basically I'm making it out of a really good quality 4x2, so the similar stuff to the stud work, so it's lovely and straight, super strong too. And it's not intended to be a floor, so it won't do floor loads, but then you can't stand up in it anyway. So it's more like somewhere that you can store stuff. We could store all the garden cushions, for example, up there, or indeed you could put a thin mattress up there and you could actually lay up there and sleep. So it'd be quite cool. So I've made up my bearers. I'm going to bolt them back now, make the joists, slot them all through. I'm not using a hanger, I just think it's nice to do a proper joint. I've got a lovely housing joint, a traditional joint on the end of a joist, which is housed into the bearers, not all the way through. It has a little shoulder at the bottom, which gives it its strength. And then I'm going to fix it all up, plasterboard the little bit behind, get the electrics through, and it's going to look amazing. So here are the two bearers. You can see all the joist positions routed in. So I basically made up this little tiny frame here, like a little jig, and that clamped on the top to through. I drilled it first to take some of the stock out, and then just went through with a template router, and that's made a really nice job of that. So this one here is double thickness because it actually bolts against glue lamb up here, which has got a plasterboard, insulated plasterboard skin, so it sits on there. There's the cables I'm going to bring through into it to get the lighting in. This side, it just fixes straight back to the glue lamb. We'll just bolt that through with some timber lock fixings, and that'll be the business. So the first thing I need to do is bring through these cables. So I need to drill the timber out so I can pass them through. So I've got a mark here, which is where the end of the timber goes. So if I bring them through at a metre, then we'll uncoil them all and thread them all out. I'm going to bring them through this particular one at a metre, which is just between these two joists, and I'll bring that straight through the middle here. So let's just do a decent size hole for that. Right, what have we got here? I think this would be absolutely perfect, about 25mm. Just bore that through there. Now I've got a void under here, so let's put a little piece of timber under to drill into. Here we go, perfect. So that's it, I can thread that through now, put the cables through and fix this first one back. I've counterbored and I've piloted for these large fixings, so I can actually put those through as well to make sure they're in situ. They're a good size fixing, be absolutely perfect for this. Bolting this back. That's ready to go. So I'm going to get these cables through first, which involves unraveling them. We're using this cable, which is quite stiff. It's all part of the regs with regards to fire, believe it or not. It's not meant to. If there was a fire in a building and everything's burning, this will not drip onto the firefighters, so it won't melt and drip. But it's not very forgiving. It's quite stiff. You can see we've got a fair bit on here. So I've got to get that through the right way. Feed it through. And eventually feed my cables all the way through into the floor. So that's the first job, and then it's a matter of getting it up there, pulling all the slack through as I go. There we go. Rest him there for a minute. Clamber up and fix it in. Let's get it the right way up. Caught myself out there. Here we go. There we go. Right, so now we can just feed it through, rest it on board. She's ready to fix. There we go. Okay, so let's get that fixed straight back. Super solid fixing. That's not going anywhere. Now we can coil the cables back up as we had them. Which will be nice. Get them tied up in a minute with some cable ties. Put them out of the way. Perfect. So I'll get the other one fixed up. We'll use a rod, that would be the best thing. So we'll just mark that rod. We know that's where it's going to go on the other side. So to make it a bit easier, because I'm working on my own, I'm just going to clamp these two blocks, 110 mil, so that's the height we need. Clamp one at this end, and then the same at the other end, flush with the bottom of the glulam, and that will hold me exactly where I need to be, and so I can get the bolts in. Hopefully this big clamp can fit underneath. Let's do it here. That'll be okay. Can't beat these clamps. It's like another pair of hands. So that's it now. I can get that up into its position. There we go. Then I just need to reference this end with the end of that one so it's nice and square. So I can probably do that with, let me see if I can do it with the laser. So what this will give me is 3 axes. So I can get it with the timber, with the end of that one, and it will put it all square. So therefore, that is where I've just got to slide my timber along to. Just here. And we're perfectly square now. So I know that's exactly where that goes. So I'm going to put the first screw in, pilot it, and then check that for the square on the measure. But it's straight down with the ridge, so I'm really happy with that. So by using the cross laser, we've aimed it with that section there, and then we've aimed it to the end of the timber over here, and it's going parallel down the center of the ridge. So I know we're all nice and true and exactly in the right space. So now that gives me the exact position to fix that timber, which is what I'll do next. Now, as I'm going into glulam, and glulam is just the hardest material, I'm going to actually on this side put a pilot hole through so it doesn't push away as we're drilling. So I'm going to drill a pilot hole to get me started. I'm going to take this one, for example. And then we'll drive a fixing through. Just to hold the first bit. And that's it. Now, once we're happy with that and all the datums are good, we'll just check that for height. 155. Yep, and that's all pretty good. We'll put a level on it as well, just to see how we're running. Let's get a bubble. There's one here. And the laser never lies, basically. Absolutely perfect, that. I think I'll probably give myself a millimetre there. Away we go. Let's get them all piloted and fixed up. So the next task is cutting the joists across. I'm going to measure these with my laser tape. So the first one goes on the end, screws in the end, so that's there. And that's 2864, I'll write that on there. And then the next ones go in the housing, so we can just poke that in there. And that gives me 2757, write that in there. I'll just check a couple, and if they're all the same, then we'll make them all the same, which is nice. 2757 will work there as well. 2757, so I think we'll go for that. Just check the end one, just to be sure. 2757, yeah, they're all exactly the same. So we'll do that, 2757. And then what we'll do is we'll set a stop on the saw to cut all the joists exactly to length on the chop saw. And then I've just got to notch the bottom out and then they'll slot in. Great, so let's get that done. So what I've got is, I've got this piece of timber which is fixed to the saw bench and it gives me a really long fence. And I've got almost like a zero clearance groove there, which represents the blade. So for measuring my lengths and putting my stop on, I can hook my blade in, measure down through there, in fact, into the other room. And there's another support, which I can actually just adjust the block, and that'll give me the exact length I need every single time. So it's super quick. So it's easy because I've got that zero clearance block there. So I can just adjust this little stop here back to where I want it. And that's it, no more measuring. Just a matter of squaring the ends up of the boards, of the joists, and fixing it in. And that's it, a repeat process job, super easy. So I've cut all the joists to length. This includes the housing, so I've obviously allowed a small joint on the end. They're all in front of the bench, and all I need to do now is just cut the housings into them, and they'll all slot in like ladder runs, I suppose. So what I've got is a section of timber here that basically that's the depth of the housing, and that is how far we're taking out. So I've set the saw up to stop at the certain height that we need, and then all I need to do is I've put a 15mm block, which is the length of the housing, on the other end. So the joists were cut to length. Now I just slide them in one by one against the stop and cut down to the line, which represents basically, if you look at the jig, it basically means we leave this much. I'll just show you what I mean there. Let's cut this down. When the jig's on there, I'm actually taking out this section here. So I've cut down to the line. Number of ways to do this. I can easily just take a little chisel and knock it off. Alternatively, I could cut it in with a handsaw, but it's just as easy to just fashion it off with a chisel. So I'll just take this little shoulder line down a bit more, and then we'll just work that in. And that's it, that's the joint done. Now, where the router cuts a little round corner, all I need to do here and here is just ease these out. A tiny little bevel on each one. And that is basically the joint finish. So it's super easy. I've got to do both ends, so I'll pull it back towards me, spin it round, poke it back through, gently push it up against our stop. I'm just trying to be gentle so I don't rattle or rock the camera. Cut this end the same. Get the little jig, pop it over the end, give myself a pencil mark. I'm going to leave the line in because it's quite a thick pencil line, that, and again just knock it out. Ease it down. And there we have a nice little joint. Pop those little corners off. So that is a joist complete. So if we just slot that one in so you can see what that's all about. So we'll try this one. And if this one fits, we just repeat the process another 6 times and they're all ready to be dropped in. So we're just gonna, it's a tight fit. So we'll slot it over onto the housing there and we will pop it in and pop this end down as well. And that's it. That's our joists. It's such a nice job, and it's used to, this is how our forefathers, the old timers, used to do a lot of joisting out. When they were trimming, they'd do this exact same joint. I think it's just really pleasing, and there's no hangers to go around, so it's just a very nice, neat finish. As I say, this bed frame is a lightweight structure. It doesn't take a lot of weight. It's for storage, and potentially you could crash out up there as well. So you can see how easy it is when you've got this nice joint detail to put all of these little joists through. It was so simple, it's just a matter of just slotting them all through. Now, okay, I've got a bit of an advantage. I built this building. I know the glue lambs are exactly the right distance apart. They're all perfect, millimeter perfect, because When I built the place, I used pinch rods everywhere to make sure they were always going to be parallel. So that's it. Now all I need to do now is obviously put the deck over. I've got a little stud wall at the back to go in. I've got my last sheet of thermal board to go up there as well. And pretty much that's it. So my Scandi style high level storage and rest. You could sleep up there, you know, put like a futon mattress up there and sleep up there. We'll probably have a hook over ladder, some safety rails to stop you falling out. But it's just somewhere to come and lay and look out at the garden. So I did this with one measurement and a very small simple template, but this did pretty much the whole job. So how did I go about it? So the distance between my glue lambs is parallel. So when I put the building up, it was just all framed out exactly perfect. So I knew that anything that goes across can be exactly the same length. So all it took was me to set my saw table up. I've got a really long piece of timber on there which can take anything the right length that I need. So it's a matter of whether it's the joists, the cladding, all I need to do, put them onto the bench, square the end up, slide them through to a stop and cut them off. So no pencil marks, no measuring. So I first of all nailed all the cladding onto the counter batten, over the vapor barrier, all the way down. And then it was time to move on to this framing out here, which forms the storage platform. So the two bearers that run down the sides are housed, and this is a traditional joint. You see them slotted all in. So I made one piece of MDF, to an offcut of MDF. Now this is the joint that goes in the bearers, or the pole plates that go through there. I also use this to mark the tenons. Once I'd cut the joist to length, I just pushed that over the top, marked it with a pencil, cut down to the line, chopped them in. There's also a hole in this jig, and that hole represents where we drill all the noggins for the cables. So everywhere where we've got a cable, we just drop this over, drill, so they're all in line and dead center of the joist, okay? And they're in the drilling zone when you can and can't drill joists. I know this isn't a floor, it's not a structural floor. It's, as I say, it's high level storage or a rest area. So it is just by doing things like that. I even use this to square up for my noggins, where my noggins go as well. So I can just hang it over the top and use it as a square. So it's a square, it's a set out point for your cables. It's also what I use to route out the joints in the pole plates on the side and mark the tenons. And it just saves so much time for the sake of making that, which probably takes about 7 or 8 minutes. So that's how I did it. I've got my deck on now. The board joint noggins are in, they're all done and dusted. All the cables are in. So that's my little mezzanine deck finished now. I can use that for storage, because one of the next big jobs that I have to do is insulate this whole subfloor, get all of my slip membrane on, underfloor heating pipes in, and get it ready for the screed.